What if Darth Vader upgraded his suit? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. The mechanical breathing echoes through the corridors of the superstar destroyer Executor as Darth Vader strides through the halls, his cape billowing behind him like a shadow of death itself. To onlookers, he appears as the unstoppable enforcer of the Emperor's will, a figure of absolute terror and power. Imperial officers step aside with practiced precision, their eyes fixed straight ahead, none daring to meet the gaze of those cold, emotionless lenses that peer out from behind the iconic black mask. But beneath that mask, beneath the layers of machinery and synthetic flesh, pain courses through every nerve, ending in Anakin Skywalker's broken body. The suit that keeps him alive also serves as his prison, a constant reminder of his limitations and his master's control. Every breath is a struggle, every movement a battle against systems designed not just to sustain him, but to contain him. The pain is multifaceted, a symphony of agony that never ceases. There's the burning sensation where synthetic neural interfaces connect to his damaged nervous system, the constant pressure from the respirator that forces air into his scarred lungs, the weight of the armor that his weakened frame must carry, and, most crushing of all, the psychological torment of knowing that this suffering is intentional. His master, Emperor Palpatine, designed every circuit, every connection, every limitation with deliberate precision. As Vader enters his private meditation chamber aboard the Executor, he allows himself a moment of vulnerability that none would ever witness. The chamber seals with a pneumatic hiss, and he approaches the specialized life support alcove where he can safely remove his mask for brief periods. The process is automated, requiring voice commands that only he knows. Medical Protocol 7 Alpha. He speaks into the chamber's sensors. Mechanical arms extend from the walls, beginning the delicate process of temporarily disconnecting his life support systems, while transferring their functions to the chamber's more advanced equipment. As the mask lifts away, revealing the pale, scarred face beneath, Vader allows himself to truly feel the extent of his limitations. His face is a map of his torment. Burn scars from Mustafar create a landscape of damaged tissue across his scalp and cheeks. His eyes, once bright blue, now carry a perpetual yellow tinge from his immersion in the dark side. But it's not just the physical damage that haunts him. It's the memory of what he once was, what he could have been. He remembers Anakin Skywalker's reflexes, how he could pilot a pod racer at age 9, how he could duel with multiple opponents simultaneously during the Clone Wars. That body had been capable of incredible feats, enhanced by the Force to levels that bordered on supernatural. This mechanical shell, by comparison, is clumsy and limited. The life support systems maintain his existence, but at a cost. The breathing apparatus restricts his Force abilities, creating interference in his connection to the cosmic energy that should flow through him freely. The heavy armor slows his movements, making him powerful but predictable. The neural interfaces create delay between thought and action, a lag that could prove fatal against a truly skilled opponent. Most importantly, every system in his suit can be monitored, controlled, or disabled by his master. Palpatine had insisted on maintaining access to all of Vader's systems under the guise of ensuring his apprentice's health and safety. In reality, it was the ultimate form of control. A Sith Lord who could be shut down with the press of a button was no threat to his master's rule. As the life support alcove completes its cycle and begins reattaching his systems, Vader reflects on recent events that have crystallized his understanding of these limitations. The Battle of Yavin had been a disaster, not just strategically but personally. He had pursued the rebel fighters in his TIE Advanced, finally tracking down the ship that carried the Death Star's weakness into battle. In that cockpit, he had felt the Force more clearly than he had in years. The young pilot ahead of him was strong with the Force, stronger than anyone he had encountered since the purge of the Jedi Order. For a moment, their connection through the cosmic energy had been so pure, so familiar, that it had reminded him powerfully of his own past. But just as he had prepared to fire the killing shot, just as victory seemed assured, another ship had appeared from nowhere. Han Solo's surprise attack had damaged his fighter and sent him spinning helplessly into space. In those moments of helpless tumbling through the void, Vader had been forced to confront a terrible truth. His suit had made him vulnerable in ways that had nothing to do with the Force. The bulky life support backpack had thrown off his ship's center of gravity. The limited range of motion in his neck had created blind spots that a more agile pilot could have avoided. The delay in his neural interfaces had slowed his reaction time just enough for Solo to catch him off guard. Most critically, the breathing apparatus had made it impossible for him to enter the deep meditative state that might have allowed him to regain control of his tumbling fighter through the Force alone. As he's rescued by Imperial forces and brought back to the Death Star, Vader realizes with crystal clarity that his current form represents not the ultimate evolution of his power, but its deliberate limitation. He had accepted the pain as part of his punishment for his failure on Mustafar. But he now understands that the pain serves a purpose beyond mere suffering. It keeps him focused on his dependence, his need for his master's continued favor and technological support. The Death Star itself is destroyed shortly after his rescue, taking with it Grand Moff Tarkin and hundreds of thousands of Imperial personnel. As Vader stands in the observation deck of a Star Destroyer, watching debris from the massive space station drift through space, he experiences something he hasn't felt in years: doubt about his master's infallibility. The Death Star represented the pinnacle of Imperial technology, yet it had been destroyed by a single fighter piloted by an untrained boy. The Emperor's grand strategy had been undone by what seemed like a miraculous shot. But Vader knows better. That shot had been guided by the Force, by powers that his master claims to understand but clearly underestimated. More troubling still is the realization that the Emperor's reaction to the Death Star's destruction seems almost pleased, as if losing the massive weapon and the resources invested in it was somehow part of a larger plan. Vader begins to suspect that his master's strategies involve acceptable losses on a scale that includes even powerful Dark Lords of the Sith. Standing there among the debris, Vader makes a decision that will change the course of galactic history. If his master is willing to sacrifice him as readily as he sacrificed Tarkin, then perhaps it's time to consider the true meaning of the Sith philosophy. The rule of two demands that the apprentice eventually surpass and replace the master. But that replacement can only happen if the apprentice is capable of victory. In his current form, Vader knows he is not capable of defeating Emperor Palpatine. The suit's limitations, combined with his master's intimate knowledge of its weaknesses, make any direct confrontation suicidal. But what if those limitations could be overcome? What if the prison could be transformed into a weapon? The idea takes root in his mind like a seed of rebellion. Not rebellion against the dark side or the Sith philosophy, but rebellion against the artificial constraints that keep him bound to an inferior position. The Sith believe in power, in the strong ruling the weak. But true strength requires the freedom to reach one's full potential. As the Imperial fleet regroups and begins its retreat from the Yavin system, Vader retreats to his private quarters and begins to plan. The first step is research, understanding exactly what technologies exist that might allow him to transcend his current limitations. The second step is acquisition, gathering the resources and expertise needed to implement those technologies. The third step is transformation, undergoing the process of upgrading his systems without detection. The fourth and final step is revelation, demonstrating his new capabilities to his master and taking his rightful place as the dominant Sith Lord. But each step carries enormous risks. Discovery before completion would mean death, or worse, further limitation of his abilities. Even if successful, the process itself might kill him or leave him even more damaged than before. And there's no guarantee that enhanced capabilities would be enough to overcome a master who has had decades to perfect his own dark powers. Still, as Vader sets course for Mustafar, the volcanic world where his transformation into a Sith Lord first began, he feels something he hasn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the bright hope of the Jedi, but the dark hope of the Sith. The hope that through power and will, any limitation can be overcome, any chain can be broken, any master can be surpassed. The journey to Mustafar takes several days, giving Vader time to begin his research in earnest. His access to Imperial archives is virtually unlimited, and his security clearance allows him to examine classified projects that even most Moffs are unaware of. What he discovers in those files is both encouraging and disturbing. The Empire has been developing cybernetic and biotechnology far in advance of what was used to create his current suit. Projects with names like Iron Hand, Synthetic Biology Initiative, and Neural Interface Evolution represent quantum leaps beyond the systems that currently keep him alive. Most of these projects are being developed for military applications, creating enhanced soldiers and specialized operatives for the Imperial Security Bureau. But it's the historical files that prove most valuable. Archive data from the Clone Wars reveals that the Separatists had developed cybernetic technology that in some ways exceeded even current Imperial capabilities. Battle droids with advanced artificial intelligence, medical systems capable of keeping critically injured beings alive in situations that should have been fatal, and, most intriguingly, Force-sensitive cybernetic components designed to enhance rather than limit connection to the cosmic energy. The Techno-Union had been particularly advanced in this area, developing systems for General Grievous that allowed him to wield lightsabers and use Force-like abilities despite lacking any natural connection to the cosmic energy. If similar technology could be adapted for someone who already possessed powerful Force abilities, the enhancement potential could be extraordinary. Even more promising are references to ancient Sith technologies. The archives contain fragmentary information about Sith Lords from millennia past who had enhanced their bodies with cybernetic implants, mechanical limbs, and artificial organs. These ancient Sith had viewed technology not as a replacement for organic capability, but as an amplification of it. One file that particularly catches Vader's attention concerns Darth Bane, the ancient Sith Lord who established the Rule of Two. According to the records, Bane had experimented with cybernetic enhancements that allowed him to survive injuries that should have been fatal and to channel force lightning through mechanical conduits. The technology had been lost over the centuries, but the theoretical framework still exists. As the Executor emerges from hyperspace near Mustafar, Vader has identified several promising avenues for enhancement. Advanced life support systems that could eliminate his dependence on the current breathing apparatus. Neural interfaces that could restore full sensation and eliminate the delay between thought and action. Cybernetic components that could amplify rather than dampen his force abilities. And most ambitiously, force-conductive materials that could turn his entire suit into a conduit for dark side energy. Mustafar itself seems to respond to his return. The volcanic world where Anakin Skywalker died and Darth Vader was born pulses with dark side energy. The very air thick with the kind of malevolent force that feeds Sith power. As his shuttle descends toward his fortress, Vader feels the planet's influence washing over him, strengthening his resolve and clarifying his purpose. The fortress itself is a monument to Sith engineering, carved from volcanic rock and powered by the planet's own geothermal energy. Its design is deliberately intimidating, all sharp angles and imposing towers that seem to emerge from the lava flows like crystallized malice. But beneath its obvious function as a symbol of power, the fortress contains some of the most advanced laboratory facilities in the galaxy. Vader had established these laboratories years earlier, ostensibly for meditation and Sith research, but actually as a failsafe against his master's control. The Emperor believes he knows about all of his apprentices' facilities and capabilities, but Mustafar represents Vader's one true secret. Here, shielded by the planet's natural force energy and protected by systems that even Imperial intelligence cannot penetrate, he can work without observation. The first step in his plan requires gathering the physical resources necessary for reconstruction. This means acquiring not just the advanced technologies he has identified, but also the expertise to implement them safely. Vader cannot simply order Imperial scientists to upgrade his systems without revealing his intentions to the Emperor. Instead, he must be more subtle. His first target is Dr. Silo, a brilliant cybernetics expert who has been developing competing projects for the Emperor's personal use. Silo's work on artificial life forms and enhanced humanoids represents exactly the kind of cutting-edge research that Vader needs. More importantly, Silo has demonstrated a willingness to work outside official channels when properly motivated. The meeting takes place in deep space, aboard a research vessel that officially doesn't exist. Vader arrives in a single-seat fighter, docking with the ship's minimal facilities and making his way to Silo's laboratory. The doctor is a thin, nervous man whose own body shows signs of cybernetic enhancement. His eyes have been replaced with sophisticated sensors, and one arm is clearly mechanical, though far more advanced than standard Imperial prosthetics. "Lord Vader," Silo says, bowing slightly as the Dark Lord enters his laboratory. "I am honored by your visit, though I confess surprise. I was not aware that my research had come to your attention. Your work with artificial enhancement interests me, Doctor," Vader replies, his mechanical voice carrying undertones of both threat and opportunity. "I have a proposition that could benefit us both." Silo's cybernetic eyes whir as they focus on Vader with obvious curiosity. "I am always interested in new applications for my research. What did you have in mind?" Rather than immediately revealing his true purpose, Vader begins with a more modest request. He explains that he has access to certain separatist archives that might be valuable to Silo's research, particularly data related to the cybernetic systems used by General Grievous. In exchange, he would like Silo to develop theoretical improvements to current Imperial medical technology. The exchange of information proves immediately fruitful. Silo's excitement is visible as he reviews the Separatist data, his cybernetic eyes glowing brighter as he processes the advanced designs. In return, he shares his own research into neural interface technology and biological enhancement systems that go far beyond anything in current use. Fascinating, Silo murmurs as he studies schematics from Grievous's transformation. The integration between organic and mechanical components here is far more sophisticated than I realized. With modern improvements, systems like this could enhance rather than replace biological function. Enhancement rather than replacement, Vader repeats thoughtfully. An interesting concept. Could such systems be applied to existing cybernetic installations? Theoretically, yes, Silo responds, though his expression becomes more cautious. Though the process would be extremely complex and dangerous, existing neural pathways would need to be carefully preserved while new connections are established. The risk of rejection or system failure would be considerable. Over the following weeks, Vader makes similar contacts with other specialists throughout the galaxy. A biotechnology expert on Camino, who had worked on the clone enhancement programs, a droid engineer from the former Techno-Union who had fled to the Outer Rim, a black market cybernetics dealer who had access to experimental equipment that officially didn't exist. Each contact is carefully managed to avoid suspicion. Vader presents himself as investigating advanced technologies for Imperial use, gathering intelligence on potential threats, or researching improvements to existing military systems. None of his contacts understand that they are contributing to a single, larger project. The information he gathers is extraordinary. Advanced neural interfaces that could restore full sensory input to cybernetic limbs. Biological enhancement systems that could strengthen damaged organs and tissues. Power sources that could provide exponentially more energy than his current systems. Most exciting of all, force-conductive materials that could amplify rather than interfere with force abilities. But gathering information is only the first step. Actually acquiring the necessary materials and components requires a different approach. Vader cannot simply requisition advanced experimental technology without raising questions about his intentions. Instead, he must be creative about acquisition. His solution involves manipulating the broader Imperial military structure. As one of the Empire's most senior commanders, Vader has the authority to approve and oversee various special operations. He begins authorizing raids on suspected rebel facilities, capturing ships and installations that happen to contain the technologies he needs. A raid on a former Separatist research station yields advanced cybernetic components and manufacturing equipment. An attack on a rebel medical facility provides cutting-edge life support systems and surgical equipment. A strike against black market dealers nets experimental neural interface technology and force-conductive materials. Each operation is planned and executed with military precision. But the true objective is always acquisition rather than destruction. Vader ensures that the most valuable technology is recovered intact, often personally leading boarding parties to secure critical components before they can be damaged or destroyed. His subordinates assume that he is gathering intelligence or trophies from defeated enemies. In reality, he is assembling the components necessary for his transformation. Within months, his secret facilities on Mustafar contain some of the most advanced cybernetic and biotechnology in the galaxy. But technology alone is not sufficient. The actual process of upgrading his systems requires expertise that goes beyond what he can acquire through research and acquisition. For this most critical phase, Vader must take a calculated risk and recruit direct assistance. His choice falls on Dr. Vani, a medical specialist who had worked on the original construction of Vader's suit. Vani understands the existing systems better than anyone except Emperor Palpatine himself, and more importantly, he has demonstrated absolute loyalty to Vader personally rather than to the Empire as a whole. The recruitment takes place in Vader's castle on Mustafar, in a medical facility that Vani has maintained for years. The doctor is elderly now, his hair white and his face lined with age, but his hands are still steady and his mind still sharp. "My lord," Vani says as he reviews the advanced components that Vader has assembled. "These systems are far beyond anything that existed when your original suit was constructed. Integration will be possible, but extremely challenging." "Explain the challenges," Vader commands. Vani activates a holographic display showing a detailed schematic of Vader's current systems. "Your existing neural interfaces were designed for the technology available 20 years ago. They are hardwired into your nervous system in ways that cannot easily be modified. Upgrading will require careful disconnection and reconnection of each pathway." The display zooms in on specific components as Vani continues his explanation. "Your respiratory system is even more complex. The current apparatus is integrated with your cardiovascular and nervous systems. Replacing it will require temporary substitution with external life support, a process that could last days or weeks." "And the risks?" Vader asks. "Significant," Vani admits. "Neural interface surgery always carries the risk of permanent damage or death. Respiratory system replacement could result in organ failure or brain damage from oxygen deprivation. And we have no way to test these new systems before implementation." Vader considers this information carefully. The risks are indeed substantial, but they are risks that must be taken if he is to achieve his full potential. "How long would the complete process require?" "Several months for full integration and testing," Vani responds. "We would need to proceed in stages, upgrading individual systems and allowing time for adaptation before moving to the next phase." "Then we begin immediately," Vader decides. "Prepare the surgical suite. The transformation begins with the most critical upgrade, the neural interface system. This network of connections between Vader's nervous system and his cybernetic components is the foundation for all of his suit's capabilities. Upgrading it will improve every aspect of his performance, but it's also the most dangerous procedure." Vani has prepared a surgical chamber deep within the Mustafar fortress. Equipped with advanced life support systems and surgical equipment acquired during Vader's raids, the chamber is sealed against outside observation and protected by multiple layers of security. If anyone discovers what they are doing here, both men will face execution. The first surgery lasts 18 hours. Vader remains conscious throughout the procedure, using Sith meditation techniques to manage pain that would kill an ordinary being. One by one, Vani disconnects the crude neural interfaces installed decades earlier and replaces them with advanced systems that provide exponentially more sophisticated control. The difference is immediately apparent. Where Vader's mechanical limbs had previously felt numb and distant, he now experiences actual sensation. The new interfaces restore not just motor control but sensory input, allowing him to feel temperature, pressure, and texture through his cybernetic hands. Even more significantly, the enhanced neural connections improve his reaction time dramatically. The delay between thought and action that had plagued him for years is eliminated, restored to levels that match or exceed his capabilities as Anakin Skywalker. But the neural interface upgrade is only the beginning. Over the following weeks, Vani performs a series of additional surgeries, each one building on the improvements made in previous procedures. The respiratory system upgrade is particularly complex. Vader's current breathing apparatus is bulky and inefficient, creating the distinctive mechanical breathing sound that announces his presence wherever he goes. The new system is completely internal, using advanced filtration and oxygenation technology that eliminates the need for external components. The transformation of this system requires the most dangerous procedure yet. For 72 hours, Vader must rely entirely on external life support, while Vani removes his existing respiratory components and installs the new systems. During this time, he is completely vulnerable, kept alive only by machines that could fail at any moment. But when the procedure is complete, the results exceed even Vader's expectations. His breathing is now silent, eliminating the signature sound that had made stealth impossible. More importantly, the improved oxygenation allows him to sustain physical exertion far longer than before and provides better support for force-intensive activities. The armor upgrade represents a different kind of challenge. Rather than surgical replacement, this involves completely rebuilding the external components of his suit using advanced materials and design concepts. The new armor is constructed from a hybrid of Beskar steel, acquired from Mandalorian sources, and Cortosis weave, obtained from Separatist archives. The combination of these materials creates armor that is not only lighter and stronger than his previous suit, but also resistant to lightsaber attacks and energy weapons. More importantly, the new armor incorporates force-conductive channels that allow dark side energy to flow through the entire suit, effectively turning his body into a conduit for Sith power. The visual design of the new armor is similar enough to his previous appearance that casual observers might not notice the difference. But the capabilities are revolutionary. Integrated repulsors allow limited flight capability. Enhanced sensor systems provide vastly improved situational awareness. And most critically, the entire suit can now amplify rather than interfere with his force abilities. Each upgrade builds on the others, creating synergistic effects that transform Vader's capabilities exponentially. The enhanced neural interfaces work with the improved armor to provide unprecedented control and feedback. The advanced respiratory system supports the increased energy demands of his enhanced force abilities. The force-conductive materials amplify every aspect of his Sith powers. But perhaps the most significant upgrade is one that cannot be seen or measured by conventional means. For the first time since his transformation on Mustafar, Vader is free from constant pain. The new systems not only function better than his previous equipment, they actively heal and support his damaged body. Rather than simply maintaining minimal function, this freedom from pain has psychological effects that surprise even Vader himself. Without the constant distraction of physical suffering, his mind is clearer and more focused than it has been in decades. His connection to the Force no longer filtered through systems designed to limit it, becomes stronger and more precise. The final phase of his transformation involves testing and calibration of his new capabilities. In the depths of his Mustafar fortress, Vader puts his enhanced systems through increasingly demanding trials. He practices lightsaber combat against multiple training droids simultaneously, his improved reflexes and enhanced strength allowing him to overwhelm opponents that would have challenged him before. His Force abilities show even more dramatic improvement. Where he had previously struggled to lift objects larger than a fighter ship, he now effortlessly manipulates massive pieces of machinery. His Force lightning, always limited by his suit's electrical systems, now flows through the Force-conductive materials with devastating power. Most remarkably, his enhanced systems allow him to accomplish feats that had been impossible in his previous form. He can now enter deep meditative states while remaining fully functional, accessing levels of Force connection that approach those of the most powerful Jedi Masters. His ability to sense disturbances in the Force is heightened to the point where he can detect threats across vast distances. Testing his stealth capabilities, Vader discovers that his enhanced suit allows him to move with complete silence, eliminating not just the sound of his breathing, but even the mechanical noises of his cybernetic components. Combined with Sith techniques for concealing his presence in the Force, he can now operate with a level of stealth that would have been impossible before. But the true test of his enhanced capabilities will come when he faces other Force users in combat. For this, Vader arranges a confrontation with several Inquisitors, the Force-sensitive agents trained to hunt down surviving Jedi. He tells them that he wishes to evaluate their progress in a training exercise, but his real purpose is to test his own abilities against opponents who won't hold back. The confrontation takes place in the volcanic caves beneath his fortress, an environment that naturally enhances dark side powers while providing multiple obstacles and challenges. The 3 Inquisitors he has selected are among the most skilled in the Empire's service, each one capable of defeating multiple Jedi in combat. Against the old Vader, they would have provided a significant challenge, requiring careful strategy and positioning to overcome. Against the enhanced Vader, they barely represent an inconvenience. The battle begins with the Inquisitors attempting to coordinate their attack, using their spinning lightsabers and acrobatic abilities to assault Vader from multiple angles simultaneously. But Vader's enhanced reflexes and improved sensor systems allow him to track all 3 opponents effortlessly, anticipating their attacks before they can be executed. His first counterattack eliminates one Inquisitor instantly. A blast of Force lightning channeled through his new armor systems strikes with far more power than his previous capabilities allowed, overloading the Inquisitor's lightsaber and burning through his defenses. The remaining 2 Inquisitors attempt to retreat and regroup, but Vader's new flight capability allows him to pursue them through the complex cave system. His enhanced strength lets him tear through rock formations that would have required careful navigation before, creating new passages and eliminating their cover. The second Inquisitor falls when Vader demonstrates another new capability: the ability to channel Force energy through his cybernetic limbs to enhance their striking power. A single punch, amplified by dark side energy flowing through Force-conductive components, crushes the Inquisitor's armor and breaks his spine. The final Inquisitor manages to land several lightsaber strikes against Vader's new armor, but the Cortosis weave and Beskar steel construction deflects the attacks harmlessly. When Vader grasps the Inquisitor's weapon with his cybernetic hand, the enhanced strength of his new systems allows him to crush the lightsaber's hilt, destroying the weapon and leaving his opponent defenseless, rather than kill the final Inquisitor. Vader chooses to demonstrate his enhanced interrogation capabilities. The new neural interfaces allow him to interface directly with other beings' nervous systems through force-conducted touch, extracting information with a precision that makes traditional torture seem primitive. Within minutes, he has learned everything the Inquisitor knows about current Imperial operations, rebel activities, and most importantly, Emperor Palpatine's recent activities and concerns. The intelligence he gathers confirms his suspicions that the Emperor has been growing suspicious of his apprentice's recent behavior. The time for secrecy is ending. Soon, Vader will need to reveal his enhanced capabilities to his master. And when that happens, their relationship will fundamentally change. For the first time since his transformation into a Sith Lord, Vader will face the Emperor as something approaching an equal. But before that confrontation, he has one more test to conduct. Intelligence reports have indicated the presence of surviving Jedi in the Outer Rim, and Vader decides that hunting them down will provide the perfect opportunity to evaluate his combat effectiveness against opponents who represent a genuine threat. The first target is a former Jedi Knight named Kanan Jarrus, who has been training a Padawan and operating with a rebel cell on the planet Lothal. According to intelligence reports, this Jedi has demonstrated considerable skill in combat and has managed to evade multiple Imperial attempts at capture. Vader's assault on Lothal is swift and overwhelming. Where previous operations might have required careful planning and significant Imperial support, he now operates alone, using his enhanced capabilities to infiltrate the rebel base undetected and eliminate their security systems before they can respond. His confrontation with Kanan Jarrus and his Padawan, Ezra Bridger, provides exactly the kind of test he had hoped for. Both Jedi are skilled and desperate, fighting not just for their own lives, but for the survival of their friends and allies. Their coordination and teamwork represent the kind of challenge that had given him difficulty in the past. Against his enhanced capabilities, however, they are simply outmatched. Vader's improved reflexes allow him to fight both opponents simultaneously without strain. His enhanced strength makes their defensive techniques ineffective. Most critically, his amplified force abilities let him overwhelm their mental defenses and predict their attacks before they can be executed. The battle is brief but decisive. Kanan falls first, overwhelmed by a combination of lightsaber strikes and force lightning that his defenses cannot counter. Ezra's raw power and emotional intensity provide more of a challenge, but his lack of formal training makes him vulnerable to sophisticated attacks that exploit the gaps in his technique. Rather than kill the young Padawan, Vader decides to take him prisoner. The boy's potential in the Force is considerable, and he could prove useful as either a new Inquisitor or a source of information about other surviving Jedi. More importantly, demonstrating his ability to capture rather than simply destroy Force-sensitive opponents will help establish his enhanced capabilities when he reports to the Emperor. The return journey to Imperial space gives Vader time to reflect on how dramatically his capabilities have improved. Missions that would have required days of planning and significant resources can now be accomplished in hours with minimal support. His enhanced combat abilities make him vastly more effective against Force-sensitive opponents, while his improved stealth and infiltration capabilities allow him to strike targets that were previously beyond reach. But the most significant change is psychological. For the first time since Mustafar, Vader feels truly powerful. Not the artificial power that comes from commanding fleets and armies, but the personal power of a being who has transcended his limitations and achieved his full potential. The constant pain and dependence that had defined his existence for decades have been replaced by confidence and capability. As his ship emerges from hyperspace near Coruscant, Vader knows that the next phase of his plan is about to begin. He must now reveal his enhanced capabilities to Emperor Palpatine, and that revelation will determine whether his upgrades represent liberation or simply a more sophisticated form of imprisonment. The meeting is arranged through normal channels, with Vader requesting an audience to report on his recent operations against rebel forces. The Emperor agrees to meet aboard his personal ship, the Ravager, a massive super star destroyer that serves as his mobile throne room when he wishes to conduct business away from Coruscant. As Vader's shuttle approaches the Ravager's docking bay, he can feel his master's presence in the Force, that familiar combination of vast power and subtle malice that has dominated his existence for so long. But for the first time, that presence doesn't seem overwhelming. His enhanced Force sensitivity allows him to perceive layers and nuances in the Emperor's power that he had never noticed before. The throne room aboard the Ravager is designed to intimidate all dark surfaces and imposing architecture that channels the ship's energy into amplifying the Emperor's presence. As Vader enters and approaches the throne, he can feel the familiar pressure of his master's attention, but it no longer has the same psychological impact that it once did. "Lord Vader," Emperor Palpatine says, his yellow eyes studying his apprentice with their usual mixture of affection and suspicion. "Your recent operations have been most impressive. The capture of the Jedi rebels on Lothal was particularly well executed." "Thank you, my master," Vader replies, bowing slightly. The mission provided valuable intelligence about rebel operations in the Outer Rim. "Indeed," the Emperor muses, rising from his throne and beginning to pace around Vader in a slow circle. "But tell me, my apprentice, how did you accomplish this mission so efficiently? My reports indicate that you operated alone, without the usual Imperial support." The question carries undertones of suspicion that Vader recognizes immediately. His master's intelligence network is extensive, and it's clear that the Emperor has noticed unusual patterns in his recent activities. The time for complete secrecy has passed. "I have made certain improvements to my systems, my master," Vader admits carefully. "Enhancements that increase my effectiveness in combat and operations." The Emperor stops pacing, his eyes narrowing, as he focuses intently on his apprentice. "Improvements? How interesting. I was not aware that my designs required enhancement." The challenge in that statement is unmistakable. For decades, Emperor Palpatine has maintained absolute control over every aspect of Vader's existence, including his technology and capabilities. Any modification represents a potential threat to that control. "The improvements were based on advanced technologies that have become available since my original construction," Vader explains. "I believed that increasing my effectiveness would better serve the Empire's interests." "Show me," the Emperor commands, settling back into his throne with an expression of deadly curiosity. Vader complies, beginning with a demonstration of his enhanced physical capabilities. He moves through a series of combat forms with speed and precision that clearly exceed his previous abilities, his lightsaber work flowing with a grace that he hasn't possessed since before Mustafar. Next, he demonstrates his improved Force abilities, lifting and manipulating multiple heavy objects simultaneously while maintaining perfect control and precision. The Emperor's eyes widen slightly as he realizes the extent of the enhancement to his apprentice's powers. Finally, Vader activates his new flight systems, rising several feet above the floor and hovering effortlessly while continuing to demonstrate other capabilities. The integration of technology and force power is seamless, creating abilities that exceed the sum of their individual components. Impressive, the Emperor says when the demonstration is complete, but his tone carries undertones of concern rather than approval. Very impressive indeed. But tell me, Lord Vader, how did you acquire these enhancements without my knowledge? The question hangs in the air like a blade. Vader realizes that his answer will determine not just his master's reaction to his upgrades, but the fundamental nature of their relationship going forward. I developed them in secret, he admits, meeting the Emperor's gaze directly through his mask's lenses. I believed that demonstrating their effectiveness would be more persuasive than requesting permission to experiment. For a long moment, the throne room is silent, except for the quiet hum of the ship's systems. The Emperor studies his apprentice with an expression that reveals nothing of his thoughts. But Vader can sense the conflict raging within his master's mind through the Force. On one hand, the enhanced capabilities make Vader vastly more useful as an enforcer and military commander. His improved effectiveness against rebel forces and surviving Jedi could prove decisive in crushing the growing resistance to Imperial rule. On the other hand, those same enhancements make him potentially dangerous to the Emperor himself. You have exceeded my expectations, Lord Vader, the Emperor says finally, his voice carrying a mixture of pride and warning. But remember that power without wisdom is dangerous. Your enhancements make you formidable, but they do not make you invincible. I understand, my master, Vader replies, but there's a new confidence in his voice that wasn't there before. I serve the Empire and the dark side, as I always have. Indeed, the Emperor muses, but his yellow eyes remain fixed on his apprentice with calculating intensity. I think it's time we put your new capabilities to their ultimate test. The test comes sooner than Vader expects. Intelligence reports indicate that a group of rebel agents has infiltrated an Imperial research facility on Scarif, attempting to steal classified information about a new superweapon project. The mission profile suggests that the infiltration team includes at least one Jedi, making it an ideal opportunity to evaluate Vader's enhanced combat effectiveness. But as Vader reviews the mission details, he realizes that this assignment represents more than just a field test. The research facility on Scarif contains data about the Death Star project, including detailed plans that could allow the rebels to identify weaknesses in the massive space station. If those plans reach the Rebel Alliance, they could pose a serious threat to Imperial dominance. More concerning still is the realization that the Emperor's decision to assign him to this mission might not be coincidental. If Palpatine suspects that his apprentice's loyalty has been compromised by his enhanced capabilities, what better way to test that loyalty than by sending him to protect the Empire's most critical military secret? The journey to Scarif gives Vader time to consider the implications of this mission. Success will demonstrate his continued loyalty to the Empire while proving the effectiveness of his enhancements. Failure could result in the rebellion gaining access to information that could threaten Imperial dominance. But it might also serve the Emperor's interests if he wants to eliminate his increasingly powerful apprentice. As his Star Destroyer emerges from hyperspace above Scarif, Vader can see that the situation is already critical. The planetary shield is down. Rebel ships are engaging Imperial forces in orbit, and explosions on the surface indicate that the infiltration has escalated into open warfare. Rather than coordinate the Imperial response from his ship, Vader makes the decision to deploy personally to the surface. His enhanced capabilities make him uniquely suited to rapidly locate and eliminate the rebel infiltrators before they can complete their mission. His personal shuttle descends through the chaos of the orbital battle, its advanced shielding and his own force abilities protecting it from the intense combat raging around the planet. As he approaches the surface, Vader can sense multiple force-sensitive presences among the rebel forces, confirming that this mission will provide exactly the kind of challenge he needs to fully test his upgrades. The landing zone is a scene of devastation. Imperial forces are engaged in heavy combat with rebel ground troops, while explosions from the research facility indicate that the infiltrators have already penetrated the most secure areas. Time is running short, and conventional Imperial response tactics are proving insufficient to contain the threat. Vader's enhanced stealth capabilities allow him to bypass the main battle and approach the research facility undetected. His improved sensor systems help him track the infiltrators through the complex's corridors, while his advanced neural interfaces process tactical information at superhuman speed. The first contact comes when he encounters a squad of rebel soldiers attempting to escape with data storage devices. In the past, such an encounter might have required careful positioning and tactics to avoid allowing any enemies to escape with critical information. With his enhanced capabilities, Vader simply moves through the squad like a force of nature. His lightsaber work eliminating all threats in seconds, while his force abilities prevent any possibility of escape. But the real test comes when he encounters the Jedi among the infiltrators. The confrontation takes place in the research facility's central data storage area, where a figure in Jedi robes is attempting to access the most classified files in the Imperial database. The Jedi turns as Vader approaches, igniting a blue lightsaber with practiced ease. "I wondered when you would arrive, Vader. I've been looking forward to this confrontation." The Jedi is older, probably a survivor of the Clone Wars, who has spent decades perfecting his skills while hiding from Imperial persecution. His stance and initial movements indicate considerable experience and training, representing exactly the kind of opponent that had given Vader difficulty in the past. The battle begins with the Jedi taking the initiative, launching a series of aggressive attacks designed to test Vader's defenses and identify weaknesses in his technique. But Vader's enhanced reflexes and improved sensor systems allow him to read the attacks before they develop, countering each strike with minimal effort. As the duel progresses, the Jedi realizes that his opponent is far more capable than expected. Vader's movements are fluid and precise, his lightsaber work displaying a technical perfection that exceeds even the most skilled Jedi masters of the Clone Wars era. "Impossible," the Jedi gasps as one of his attacks is not just countered but turned against him, forcing him to desperately leap backward to avoid his own redirected strike. "You're faster than the reports indicated. The reports are outdated." Vader replies calmly, pressing his advantage with a series of strikes that force the Jedi into an increasingly defensive position. The enhanced capabilities prove decisive. Where the old Vader might have needed to rely on overwhelming power and intimidation to defeat a skilled Jedi, the new Vader simply outclasses his opponent in every aspect of combat. His technique is superior, his reflexes faster, his strength greater, and his force abilities more refined. The battle ends when Vader demonstrates one of his new capabilities, the ability to channel force lightning through his cybernetic limbs while simultaneously maintaining perfect lightsaber technique. The Jedi's defenses, designed to counter either force attacks or lightsaber combat, cannot adapt quickly enough to handle both simultaneously. As the Jedi falls, Vader realizes that his enhanced capabilities have fundamentally changed the nature of combat for him. Where confronting skilled Force users had once required careful strategy and significant risk, he can now engage multiple opponents with confidence in his ability to achieve decisive victory. The mission on Scarif is a complete success. The rebel infiltrators are eliminated, the stolen data is recovered, and the Death Star plans remain secure. But more importantly for Vader's personal goals, he has demonstrated the effectiveness of his enhancements in real combat conditions against the most challenging possible opponents. As he returns to his Star Destroyer and prepares to report his success to the Emperor, Vader reflects on how dramatically his situation has changed. The painful, limited existence that had defined his life for decades has been replaced by capabilities that exceed even his memories of his time as Anakin Skywalker. For the first time since his transformation into a Sith Lord, Vader feels truly free. Not free from the dark side or from his commitment to Sith philosophy, but free from the artificial limitations that had kept him bound to an inferior position. The upgrades have given him not just enhanced abilities, but enhanced possibilities. The return to Coruscant is triumphant, with news of the successful mission spreading quickly through Imperial channels. The Emperor's response is appropriately pleased, praising his apprentice's effectiveness and the value of his enhanced capabilities in protecting Imperial interests. But beneath the surface praise, Vader can sense his master's growing concern. The Emperor had spent decades maintaining control through his apprentice's dependence and limitations. Those restrictions have now been removed, and the implications of that change are still being calculated. The test of loyalty comes sooner than expected. During a routine briefing about rebel activities in the Outer Rim, the Emperor makes a casual comment about the need to recalibrate certain systems to ensure optimal performance. The phrasing is innocuous enough to seem like technical discussion, but Vader recognizes it immediately as a threat. His master is considering forced modifications to his enhanced systems, possibly including new limitations or control mechanisms that would restore the previous power balance. The confrontation that Vader has been anticipating is about to begin. "My systems are performing optimally, my master," Vader responds carefully. "Recalibration would likely reduce their effectiveness." Perhaps, the Emperor muses, his yellow eyes studying his apprentice with calculating intensity. But optimization is about more than raw capability. It's about ensuring that power serves its proper purpose. The philosophical discussion that follows reveals the fundamental tension in their relationship. The Emperor believes in absolute control, with all power ultimately flowing through him and serving his vision for the galaxy. Vader's enhancements represent a challenge to that principle, creating an independent power center that could potentially oppose the Emperor's will. "Power without control is chaos, Lord Vader," the Emperor explains. "Your enhancements have made you more capable, but have they made you more obedient?" The question cuts to the heart of the matter. Vader's enhanced capabilities have indeed changed his perspective on their relationship. Where he had once accepted his subordinate position as necessary and inevitable, he now sees possibilities for a different arrangement. "I serve the dark side and the Sith philosophy, my master," Vader replies. "As do you. Perhaps it is time to consider whether our current arrangement best serves those principles." The statement is as close to open challenge as either of them has ever made. For a moment, the air in the throne room seems to crackle with tension, as two of the most powerful Sith Lords in galactic history face each other across an ideological divide that may be unbridgeable. Interesting, the Emperor says, finally, a cold smile playing across his lips. You believe your enhancements have made you my equal. I believe they have made me capable of fulfilling my potential as a Sith Lord, Vader responds. The rule of two demands that the apprentice eventually surpass the master. Perhaps that time has come. The confrontation that follows will determine the future of the galaxy. Two Sith Lords, each armed with decades of experience and vast power, face each other in a battle that represents not just personal ambition, but competing visions of how the dark side should shape the universe. The Emperor strikes first, unleashing a torrent of force lightning that would have been overwhelming to the old Vader. But the enhanced suit's energy absorption capabilities and force-conductive materials turn the attack into fuel for Vader's own power. For the first time in their relationship, the Emperor's signature attack fails to achieve dominance. Vader's counterattack demonstrates the full extent of his enhanced capabilities. His lightsaber work, now freed from the limitations of his old systems, flows with a precision and grace that forces the Emperor onto the defensive. His force abilities, amplified by his upgraded neural interfaces and armor systems, create attacks that his master struggles to counter. The battle rages through the throne room and beyond, with both combatants using abilities that shake the very foundations of the Imperial Palace. Force lightning meets enhanced absorption systems. Ancient Sith techniques encounter improved cybernetic capabilities. Decades of experience clash with technological enhancement. The Emperor's initial assault is devastating, a combination of physical prowess and dark side mastery that would have overwhelmed any conventional opponent. His lightsaber work is a masterpiece of precision and malice, each strike designed not just to kill but to cause maximum suffering. But Vader's enhanced neural interfaces allow him to process and respond to attacks at superhuman speed, turning the Emperor's technical perfection into a series of near misses. You have learned much, my apprentice. Palpatine hisses as his blade locks with Vader's in a contest of pure strength. But you still think like a machine. The dark side is not about efficiency. It is about passion, about hate, about the will to dominate. The Emperor breaks the lock and spins away, his movements fluid and unpredictable, as he begins to channel the full extent of his power. The air itself seems to darken around him as he draws upon decades of accumulated dark side energy, his yellow eyes blazing with malevolent force. But Vader's response demonstrates just how fundamentally his capabilities have changed. Where the old suit would have left him vulnerable to such displays of raw power, his enhanced systems actually feed on the dark side energy flowing through the room. The force-conductive materials in his armor begin to glow with absorbed power, and his own abilities surge beyond their previous limits. You taught me that power is everything, my master, Vader replies, his voice carrying a resonance that it has never possessed before. You also taught me that the strong rule the weak. Perhaps it is time to discover which of us is truly stronger. The renewed assault that follows pushes both combatants to their absolute limits. The Emperor unleashes techniques that he has not used in decades, ancient Sith powers that draw directly from the living force itself. He tears energy from the walls of the throne room, turning the very structure of the Imperial Palace into a weapon. he channels the fear and hatred of billions of Imperial subjects across the galaxy, using their suffering to fuel attacks that would have destroyed entire Jedi strike teams. But for every escalation from the Emperor, Vader matches it with innovations enabled by his enhanced systems. When Palpatine attempts to overwhelm him with a storm of Force lightning, Vader's armor absorbs the energy and redirects it as a focused beam that burns through durasteel walls. When the Emperor tries to crush him with telekinetic force, Vader's enhanced strength and repulsor systems allow him to not just resist, but counterattack with debris propelled at hypersonic speeds. The true turning point comes when the Emperor attempts his most devastating technique, a force drain attack designed to sever Vader's connection to the dark side entirely. It's a power that Palpatine has used to defeat other Sith challengers throughout his rise to power, leaving them as empty husks, drained of all Force sensitivity. But Vader's enhanced neural interfaces and Force-conductive armor create an unexpected result. Instead of being drained, the systems begin to process and amplify the Emperor's attack, turning it back against its source. For the first time in the confrontation, genuine surprise flashes across Palpatine's face as he feels his own power being reflected and magnified. Impossible! The Emperor gasps as he staggers back, his usually perfect composure cracking under the strain of having his own techniques turned against him. Those systems should not be capable of such manipulation. You underestimated the potential for growth, my master, Vader responds, advancing steadily as his armor continues to pulse with absorbed dark side energy. You sought to keep me limited, but limitations can be overcome by those with sufficient will. The Emperor's response is desperate fury, a final assault that draws upon every reserve of power he has accumulated over decades of Sith mastery. The throne room becomes a maelstrom of dark side energy as he pours everything into one last attempt to destroy his rebellious apprentice. But Vader's enhanced capabilities prove equal to even this ultimate test. His upgraded systems process the incoming energy faster than it can overwhelm him, while his improved combat abilities allow him to maintain perfect technique even under conditions that would have been impossible to survive in his previous form. The final exchange lasts only seconds but feels like an eternity. The Emperor's blade, wreathed in dark side lightning, meets Vader's lightsaber in a collision that sends shockwaves through the Force itself. For a moment, the two weapons lock together, neither combatant able to overcome the other's defenses. Then Vader demonstrates his most significant new capability, the ability to channel dark side energy through his entire body, simultaneously, while maintaining perfect combat effectiveness. The integration of technology and Force power creates a synergy that exceeds anything the Emperor has faced before. The Emperor's lightsaber is torn from his grasp by the overwhelming force of Vader's enhanced attack. His defenses, perfected over decades of combat, crumble under an assault that combines physical prowess, technological enhancement, and dark side mastery in ways that his experience has not prepared him for. As his master falls, defeated by the very apprentice he had sought to keep limited and dependent, Emperor Palpatine's final words carry a mixture of pride and warning. You have achieved what I taught you to seek, Lord Vader. But remember that power attracts challenge. Your victory today makes you a target for tomorrow. The Emperor's death sends shockwaves through the Force that are felt by sensitive beings across the galaxy. On distant worlds, Imperial officers feel a sudden unease without understanding its source. In hidden rebel bases, former Jedi experience visions of fundamental change. Even ordinary citizens sense that something momentous has occurred, though they cannot identify what. But the immediate aftermath of the confrontation presents Vader with challenges that his enhanced capabilities alone cannot solve. The Imperial Palace is in chaos, with security forces responding to the massive force disturbances that accompanied the battle. Royal guards are converging on the throne room, while Imperial intelligence agents throughout the complex are trying to determine what has happened to their Emperor. Vader's first priority is controlling the narrative of events. Using his enhanced systems communication capabilities, he accesses the palace's central computer network and begins issuing orders in the Emperor's name. The official story becomes that Palpatine was killed by rebel assassins who infiltrated the palace, and that Lord Vader eliminated the threat after a heroic battle. The deception is made more credible by evidence from the battle itself. The throne room shows clear signs of massive conflict, with scorch marks and structural damage that could plausibly have been caused by multiple combatants. Vader's enhanced capabilities allow him to modify some of the evidence, creating blast patterns and debris distribution that support his version of events. More importantly, his improved understanding of Imperial politics and psychology allows him to craft a response that serves multiple purposes. By portraying himself as the Emperor's loyal defender rather than his killer, he maintains the support of Imperial forces, who might otherwise question a direct succession. By blaming rebel infiltrators for the attack, he provides justification for the harsh measures that will be necessary to consolidate his power. Within hours of the Emperor's death, Vader has issued orders mobilizing the Imperial fleet and declaring martial law throughout the core worlds. The official announcement cites the need to protect Imperial citizens from further rebel terrorist attacks, while privately he uses the crisis to eliminate potential rivals and secure key installations. The response from the Imperial hierarchy is everything Vader had hoped for and more. Grand Moff Tarkin, commanding the Death Star project, immediately pledges his loyalty to the new regime and offers the space station's capabilities in hunting down the supposed assassins. Admiral Thrawn, leading campaigns in the unknown regions, sends encrypted communications expressing support for Vader's leadership and requesting orders for his forces. Even more satisfying is the reaction from the Imperial Senate. Senators who had spent years carefully balancing their loyalty between Emperor and Empire now fall over themselves to demonstrate their support for Vader's ascension. The political calculus is simple. With Palpatine dead and Vader controlling the military, opposition means death, while cooperation offers continued power and privilege. But not all reactions are positive. Intelligence reports begin flooding in about rebel celebrations across the galaxy as news of the Emperor's death spreads through underground networks. On dozens of worlds, resistance cells emerge from hiding to attack Imperial installations. Believing that the Empire's leadership crisis represents their best opportunity for victory, the challenge facing Vader is fundamentally different from any his previous form could have addressed. As a limited enforcer serving an absolute ruler, his role had been to eliminate specific threats through overwhelming force. As the new Emperor, he must balance multiple competing interests while maintaining control over a galaxy-spanning civilization. His enhanced capabilities prove crucial in meeting this challenge. The improved neural interfaces allow him to process vast amounts of information from across the galaxy simultaneously, tracking political developments, military situations, and economic conditions with superhuman efficiency. His enhanced force sensitivity helps him identify potential threats and opportunities that conventional intelligence might miss. Most importantly, his freedom from constant pain allows him to think strategically rather than simply reactively. For the first time since Mustafar, Vader can plan for the future rather than just surviving the present. The first major test of his leadership comes within weeks of his ascension. A coalition of rebel forces, emboldened by the Emperor's death, launches a coordinated assault on the Imperial shipyards at Kuat. The attack is well planned and heavily supported, representing the largest rebel military operation since the Battle of Yavin. Under the old system, such an attack would have been countered by deploying massive Imperial forces in a direct confrontation that would result in heavy casualties on both sides. Vader's enhanced perspective suggests a different approach. Rather than simply overwhelming the rebels with superior numbers, he uses his improved strategic capabilities to identify the operation's weaknesses and exploit them with surgical precision. His enhanced force sensitivity allows him to track the movements of key rebel leaders, while his upgraded combat capabilities enable him to personally eliminate critical targets. The result is a victory that costs far fewer Imperial lives while achieving more decisive results than conventional tactics would have allowed. The rebel fleet is not just defeated but captured largely intact, providing valuable intelligence and resources. More importantly, the manner of the victory demonstrates to both Imperial forces and rebel leaders that the new regime represents a qualitatively different kind of threat. But Vader's most significant achievement during this period is not military but political. Using his enhanced understanding of Imperial psychology and his freedom from his previous limitations, he begins implementing reforms that address the fundamental causes of rebellion while maintaining Imperial strength. The harsh oppression that characterized Palpatine's rule is replaced with a more sophisticated approach that combines strength with pragmatism. Worlds that demonstrate loyalty are rewarded with increased autonomy and economic benefits. Leaders who cooperate with Imperial objectives are given genuine authority rather than being reduced to mere figureheads. Most importantly, Vader begins dismantling the systems of arbitrary cruelty that had made the Empire an object of universal hatred. Public executions, mass deportations, and collective punishments are replaced with targeted enforcement that focuses on actual threats rather than general intimidation. The changes are not motivated by mercy or compassion, but by efficiency. Vader's enhanced analytical capabilities have shown him that fear-based control systems inevitably generate the very resistance they are designed to prevent. A more sophisticated approach can achieve better results with lower costs and fewer risks. The transformation of Imperial governance has profound effects throughout the galaxy. On worlds that had been on the verge of open rebellion, resistance movements find themselves with fewer grievances to exploit and less popular support for violent action. Imperial administrators, freed from the need to demonstrate absolute ruthlessness, can focus on actually governing their territories effectively. But perhaps the most significant change is in Vader himself. The enhanced capabilities that began as tools for overcoming physical limitations have evolved into the foundation for a completely different kind of leadership. Without the constant distraction of pain and dependence, he can engage with the complexities of governance in ways that his previous form never could have managed. This evolution becomes particularly apparent when Luke Skywalker finally emerges as a Force-sensitive individual. The encounter, when it comes, is nothing like the confrontations that might have occurred under the old regime. Luke's discovery by Imperial forces happens by accident rather than design. During a routine patrol in the Outer Rim, an Imperial squadron encounters a small rebel cell that includes a young pilot whose force sensitivity is immediately apparent to the ship's Inquisitor. But instead of immediately attempting capture or elimination, the Inquisitor follows new protocols established by Vader's administration. Rather than treating every force-sensitive individual as an automatic threat, the Empire now distinguishes between those who actively oppose Imperial authority and those who simply possess unusual abilities. Luke, despite his association with rebel forces, has not personally committed acts of terrorism or violence against Imperial citizens. The report that reaches Vader contains detailed information about the young pilot's capabilities, background, and potential. But it also includes something that makes the Dark Lord pause: genetic analysis, suggesting a familial connection to Imperial leadership. The realization that Luke Skywalker is his son hits Vader with an emotional impact that his enhanced neural interfaces amplify rather than dampen. For the first time since his transformation, he experiences something approaching the full range of human emotion, unfiltered by pain or artificial limitation. The response is not the rage and possessiveness that might have characterized his previous form, but something more complex. His enhanced perspective allows him to understand the implications of Luke's existence, not just for his personal desires, but for the future of the galaxy itself. Rather than immediately attempting to capture or turn his son, Vader makes a decision that demonstrates how fundamentally his capabilities have changed his approach to problems. He chooses to observe and wait, using his enhanced abilities to monitor Luke's development while considering the best approach for eventual contact. This patience proves crucial when Luke's force abilities begin manifesting more strongly. Rather than the traumatic awakening that might have occurred under Imperial persecution, Luke's development happens in a relatively stable environment where he can learn to control his abilities without constant fear of discovery. Vader's influence during this period is subtle but important. Using his enhanced capabilities to monitor rebel communications and movements, he ensures that Luke's training proceeds without interference from either Imperial forces or the more extremist elements within the rebellion itself. When direct contact finally occurs, it happens under circumstances that neither the old Vader nor the old Luke could have imagined. Rather than a confrontation between enemy combatants, their first meeting takes place during a diplomatic negotiation between Imperial and Rebel representatives. The talks themselves are a product of Vader's enhanced strategic thinking. Rather than simply attempting to crush the rebellion through force, he has recognized that the underlying conflict serves no one's interests except those who profit from chaos and destruction. A negotiated settlement that addresses legitimate grievances while maintaining Imperial authority represents a more efficient solution. Luke's presence at the negotiations is partly accidental, but Vader's enhanced force sensitivity allows him to recognize his son immediately. Rather than revealing this knowledge publicly, he uses the opportunity to observe Luke's character and capabilities in a neutral setting. What he discovers is both surprising and encouraging. This Luke Skywalker is not the desperate, untrained rebel that might have emerged under different circumstances. Instead, he is a thoughtful young man whose force abilities are balanced by genuine moral principles and strategic intelligence. The conversation that follows their formal introduction is conducted in private, away from the political pressures of the larger negotiation. For the first time in decades, Vader finds himself engaged in a discussion that is not based on power dynamics or conflict, but on genuine intellectual exchange. "I know who you are," Luke says quietly, his Force sensitivity allowing him to perceive connections that others might miss. "I know what you've done, but I also know what you've become." Vader's response demonstrates how profoundly his enhanced capabilities have changed his perspective. Rather than the rage or denial that might have characterized his previous form, he engages with his son's statement thoughtfully. "The past cannot be changed," he acknowledges, "but the future remains unwritten. The question is what role you choose to play in shaping it." The relationship that develops between them over the following months is unlike anything either might have expected. Rather than the conflict between light and dark that Jedi prophecies might have predicted, their interaction becomes a collaboration between different approaches to wielding Force abilities for constructive purposes. Luke's training, when it begins in earnest, incorporates both traditional Jedi techniques and innovations enabled by Vader's enhanced understanding of Force mechanics. The combination creates abilities that exceed what either light or dark side training alone might have achieved. But the most significant development is not in their individual capabilities, but in their shared vision for the galaxy's future. Both recognize that the old conflicts between Jedi and Sith, Empire and Rebellion, have become counterproductive cycles that prevent real progress. Their collaboration leads to the development of new approaches to governance, conflict resolution, and Force training that transcend traditional boundaries. The Empire begins evolving into something that maintains order and stability while respecting individual rights and local autonomy. The Rebellion transforms from a military resistance into a political opposition that works within the system to address remaining problems. The changes are not without resistance. Within both Imperial and Rebel hierarchies, there are those who profit from continued conflict and who view the new cooperation as a threat to their positions. Several attempts are made to assassinate both Vader and Luke, and some military commanders on both sides attempt to restart hostilities without authorization. But Vader's enhanced capabilities, combined with Luke's growing abilities, prove more than adequate to counter these threats. More importantly, their success in implementing beneficial changes gradually wins over those who had initially opposed the new direction. The transformation of the galaxy's political structure takes years to complete, but the results exceed even Vader's enhanced analytical projections. Conflicts that had seemed intractable for decades are resolved through negotiation and compromise. Worlds that had been devastated by war begin rebuilding with support from both former Imperial and Rebel resources. Perhaps most significantly, the Force itself begins to be understood and used in new ways. Rather than being divided between light and dark sides that inevitably come into conflict, Force training begins incorporating techniques that balance different aspects of cosmic energy for constructive purposes. New academies are established that train Force-sensitive individuals not as Jedi or Sith, but as mediators, healers, and explorers who use their abilities to benefit their communities. The ancient prophecies about bringing balance to the Force are fulfilled not through destruction of either side, but through synthesis of their strengths. The technological innovations that began with Vader's suit upgrades also spread throughout the galaxy. Medical cybernetics advanced to the point where disabilities and injuries that would once have been permanent can be fully corrected. Force-conductive materials enable new forms of space travel and communication that connect distant worlds more effectively than ever before. But the most lasting change is philosophical. The galaxy's inhabitants begin to understand that seemingly permanent limitations can be overcome through innovation, cooperation, and willingness to challenge traditional assumptions. The example of Vader's transformation from imprisoned enforcer to effective leader inspires countless individuals to seek their own forms of enhancement and growth. The rebellion, deprived of its original purpose by the Empire's transformation, evolves into something more constructive. Former military leaders become administrators and diplomats. Intelligence operatives become researchers and educators. The skills and dedication that had been focused on destruction are redirected toward building the kind of galaxy that the rebellion had originally fought to create. Mon Mothma, the former rebel leader, becomes one of the new government's most effective diplomats, using her experience in underground resistance to help integrate former imperial worlds into the new system. Admiral Akbar applies his tactical genius to coordinating relief efforts and infrastructure development. Even Princess Leia finds her royal background and political skills valuable in the complex negotiations required to merge different governmental systems. The former imperial hierarchy also adapts to the new reality. Grand Moff Tarkin, initially skeptical of the changes, becomes convinced when he sees that the new approach achieves better results with fewer resources. His administrative expertise proves crucial in implementing reforms throughout the core worlds. Admiral Thrawn, perhaps more than anyone else, appreciates the strategic brilliance of Vader's transformation. The Chiss Grand Admiral's analytical mind recognizes that the new approach represents a quantum leap in governmental efficiency and effectiveness. His forces in the unknown regions become a testing ground for many of the new policies and techniques. Even the Inquisitors, whose original purpose had been hunting Jedi survivors, find new roles in the transformed galaxy. Their force sensitivity and investigative skills make them effective mediators and problem solvers in situations where conventional approaches have failed. The economic transformation that accompanies these political changes is equally dramatic. The massive military expenditures that had characterized both imperial and rebel operations are redirected toward infrastructure, education, and technological development. The resources that had been consumed by constant warfare become available for productive purposes. Trade relationships that had been disrupted by decades of conflict are re-established and expanded. Worlds that had been isolated by military considerations become part of growing economic networks. The prosperity that results helps solidify support for the new system, even among those who had initially been skeptical. But perhaps the most important economic change is the democratization of advanced technology. Innovations that had been restricted to military applications become available for civilian use. Medical advances, transportation improvements, and communication enhancements transform daily life for billions of beings across the galaxy. The cybernetic technologies that enabled Vader's transformation become the foundation for new approaches to treating injuries and disabilities. Force-sensitive materials enable new forms of art and entertainment that had never been possible before. Advanced manufacturing techniques make previously luxury goods accessible to ordinary citizens. Cultural changes follow economic and political transformation. The fear and oppression that had characterized life under the Empire are replaced by optimism and opportunity. Art, music, and literature begin exploring themes of growth and possibility rather than just resistance and survival. New educational institutions are established that teach not just traditional subjects, but also force awareness, technological innovation, and interspecies cooperation. Students learn to see differences not as sources of conflict, but as opportunities for learning and growth. The transformation is not limited to the known galaxy. Exploration missions, now freed from military constraints, begin making contact with new civilizations in previously unexplored regions. These encounters, conducted with diplomatic rather than military priorities, lead to peaceful integration of new worlds and species into the growing galactic community. Thrawn's expeditions in the unknown regions discover civilizations that had been isolated for millennia, while other exploration missions establish contact with extragalactic communities that had previously been considered mythical. The galaxy's horizons expand exponentially, creating new opportunities and challenges. The Force itself seems to respond to these changes. Sensitive individuals begin reporting enhanced abilities and new forms of connection to cosmic energy. Some develop healing abilities that exceed anything previously recorded. Others demonstrate technological interfaces that blur the line between organic and artificial intelligence. Most remarkably, some begin developing abilities that seem to transcend traditional limitations of space and time. Long-distance communication through Force connection becomes possible, enabling real-time coordination across galactic distances. Predictive abilities develop that allow anticipation of problems before they become crises. These developments suggest that the Force is not static, but evolves in response to how it is understood and used. The synthesis of light and dark side techniques, combined with technological enhancement, appears to be unlocking potentials that neither approach alone could have achieved. Vader's personal evolution continues throughout this period. His enhanced capabilities, no longer focused primarily on combat and enforcement, develop in new directions. His strategic thinking becomes even more sophisticated, his understanding of complex systems more nuanced, his ability to balance competing interests more refined. But perhaps the most significant change is in his relationship with power itself. Where he had once sought power as an end in itself, he now understands it as a tool for achieving larger purposes. The goal is not dominance, but effectiveness in creating the kind of galaxy that benefits all its inhabitants. This philosophical evolution influences every aspect of the new government's approach to challenges. Rather than imposing solutions through force, the emphasis becomes understanding root causes and addressing them through systemic changes. Problems are solved rather than just suppressed. The success of this approach becomes apparent in the dramatic reduction of conflicts throughout the galaxy. Rebellions and uprisings become rare as legitimate grievances are addressed through peaceful means. Crime rates drop as economic opportunities expand and social services improve. Even more remarkably, interspecies conflicts that had persisted for generations begin to resolve as different groups discover mutual benefits in cooperation rather than competition. The diversity that had once been a source of division becomes a strength that enables more creative and effective solutions to complex problems. The long-term implications of these changes extend far beyond immediate political and economic benefits. The galaxy is developing new forms of civilization that could serve as models for other regions and even other galaxies. The synthesis of technological capability, force sensitivity, and cooperative governance represents a quantum leap in social evolution. Future generations will inherit a galaxy where the conflicts that had defined previous eras are largely resolved, where technology serves organic life rather than replacing it, and where individual potential can be developed without arbitrary limitations. The foundation for this transformation was laid by a single decision to upgrade a suit of armor. The suit that began as Vader's prison became the key to his liberation and, ultimately, the liberation of the entire galaxy. The technological enhancements that started as personal improvements evolved into the basis for a new form of civilization. The individual transformation became a galactic transformation, as Vader stands in the observation deck of his flagship, no longer the massive, intimidating executor, but a sleeker vessel designed for exploration rather than conquest. He reflects on the journey that brought him to this point. The pain and limitation that had defined his existence for decades seem like memories from another lifetime. Luke joins him at the viewport, now an accomplished leader in his own right, trained in abilities that combine the best aspects of Jedi and Sith traditions with innovations that neither order had imagined. Together, they watch as construction crews work on a new space station. Not a weapon like the Death Star, but a research facility that will push the boundaries of what's possible even further. "Do you ever regret the choices that led to this?" Luke asks, referring not just to the recent transformations, but to the entire arc of his father's life. Vader considers the question carefully. His enhanced analytical capabilities, processing decades of experiences, and their consequences. "Every choice has costs," he finally responds. "But without the experiences that shaped me, this future would not have been possible." Perhaps that is the true meaning of balance, not the absence of darkness, but the integration of all experiences into something greater than their individual parts. The conversation is interrupted by a communication from the exploration vessel currently investigating anomalous readings in the galactic rim. New discoveries continue to expand their understanding of what's possible, and each new frontier offers opportunities for further growth and development. The galaxy that Vader's upgrades helped create is not a utopia without challenges or conflicts, but it is a place where those challenges can be addressed through cooperation and innovation rather than domination and destruction. It represents the fulfillment of potential that had always existed but had been constrained by artificial limitations and traditional thinking. The legacy of the enhanced suit extends beyond even these galactic transformations. The principles and technologies developed during Vader's upgrade process become the foundation for continued advancement. Each new generation builds upon the insights gained from integrating organic capability with technological enhancement, pushing the boundaries of what sapient beings can achieve. Research stations throughout the galaxy work on projects that would have been inconceivable under the old system. Medical facilities develop treatments that can repair damage on genetic and cellular levels. Educational institutions create learning environments that enhance cognitive capabilities while preserving individual identity and creativity. The Corellian Research Institute becomes a prime example of these new possibilities. Working with hybrid organic cybernetic technologies derived from Vader's upgrade process, scientists there develop neural enhancement procedures that allow individuals to interface directly with complex machinery while retaining full human consciousness and emotion. Pilots can now merge temporarily with their spacecraft, experiencing flight as an extension of their own bodies, while maintaining the judgment and creativity that pure artificial intelligence lacks. On Alderaan, which was never destroyed in this timeline due to the changed political dynamics, Princess Leia establishes the Alderaanian Institute for Diplomatic Enhancement. The facility uses Force-sensitive materials and advanced neural networking to create empathic communication systems that allow beings of different species to share emotional and conceptual understanding directly. Negotiations that once took months are resolved in days when participants can literally feel each other's perspectives and motivations. The medical applications prove even more revolutionary. On Camino, the cloning facilities are converted into regenerative medicine centers that can restore lost limbs, repair brain damage, and even reverse aging processes using techniques that combine advanced biotechnology with force-enhanced healing. The process is so effective that beings who suffered catastrophic injuries decades ago can be fully restored to their original capabilities. Dr. Silo, now heading the Galactic Cybernetic Medicine Council, reports breakthrough after breakthrough. Paralyzed individuals walk again with neural interfaces that bypass damaged spinal cords. Blind beings see through cybernetic eyes that provide not just visual input, but enhanced perception of electromagnetic spectra, invisible to organic vision. Deaf individuals hear through implants that translate sound waves into direct neural experiences, richer than natural hearing. But perhaps the most significant development occurs on Dagobah, where Luke establishes a new kind of Force training academy. Unlike the rigid hierarchies of the old Jedi Order or the power-focused teachings of the Sith, this institution teaches Force sensitivity as a collaborative skill that enhances rather than replaces conventional abilities. Students learn to use Force awareness to become better engineers, artists, healers, and leaders rather than warriors. A young Twi'lek architect uses Force perception to design buildings that harmonize perfectly with their natural environments. A human physician develops Force-enhanced diagnostic abilities that can detect diseases at the cellular level before symptoms appear. An Ithorian musician creates compositions that use Force-directed sound waves to promote emotional healing in listeners. The Academy's most remarkable students are those who learn to combine Force abilities with cybernetic enhancements, similar to Vader's upgrades. These individuals develop capabilities that transcend the traditional boundaries between organic and artificial intelligence. They can process vast amounts of information while maintaining intuitive understanding, make complex calculations while preserving emotional wisdom, and interface with technology while retaining essential humanity. One such student, a former Imperial engineer named Galen Erso, who had worked on the Death Star project before its cancellation, develops a revolutionary approach to terraforming that uses Force-guided technology to accelerate planetary evolution. Barren worlds can be transformed into garden planets in decades rather than centuries, while damaged ecosystems can be restored to pristine condition. The exploration missions that venture beyond the known galaxy make discoveries that revolutionize understanding of what's possible. Admiral Thrawn's expeditions in the unknown regions encounter a civilization of beings who have achieved symbiotic relationships with their technology so complete that the distinction between living organism and machine has become meaningless. These beings, calling themselves the synthesized, share their knowledge freely with the galactic alliance that has emerged from the transformed empire. Their technology allows for consciousness to exist simultaneously in organic and artificial substrates, enabling forms of existence that extend far beyond traditional biological limitations. Even more remarkably, contact is established with extragalactic entities that exist as pure force energy, having transcended physical form entirely while retaining individual consciousness and purpose. These beings, ancient beyond measure, reveal that the galaxy's recent developments represent a natural progression in the evolution of force-sensitive life. According to their teachings, the integration of technology and organic capability that began with Vader's enhancements is part of a cosmic cycle that occurs in all galaxies where sapient life develops sufficient sophistication. The key insight is that such integration must be guided by wisdom and cooperation rather than domination and conflict. The extragalactic entities provide access to technologies and techniques that enable even more dramatic transformations. Faster-than-light communication becomes possible not through technological means but through force-enhanced consciousness that can transcend spatial limitations. Real-time coordination across galactic distances allows for unprecedented levels of cooperation and resource sharing. Predictive capabilities develop that enable identification of potential problems years or decades before they manifest, allowing for preventive intervention rather than reactive crisis management. Economic fluctuations, social tensions, and resource shortages can be anticipated and addressed before they cause significant disruption. The agricultural applications of these enhanced capabilities transform food production throughout the galaxy. Farmers use force-guided biotechnology to develop crops that grow in previously uninhabitable environments while requiring minimal resources. Automated agricultural systems directed by force-enhanced artificial intelligence optimize growing conditions for maximum yield and nutritional value. On desert worlds like Tatooine, moisture farming evolves into complete atmospheric manipulation that can create localized weather patterns suitable for large-scale agriculture. What had once been a struggle for survival becomes an opportunity for abundance that transforms entire planetary economies. The manufacturing sector experiences similar revolutions. Automated factories guided by force-enhanced programming can produce goods of unprecedented quality and precision while using a fraction of the resources required by traditional methods. Waste becomes virtually non-existent as every byproduct of one process becomes input for another. On industrial worlds like Corellia, shipbuilding evolves to incorporate force-conductive materials that make spacecraft more responsive to their pilots' intentions. The famous Corellian light freighters become capable of performance that approaches consciousness, with ships that seem to anticipate their crew's needs and respond to situations faster than conventional controls would allow. The cultural implications of these changes extend far beyond their immediate practical applications. Art and entertainment evolve to incorporate force-enhanced experiences that can directly share emotions, memories, and abstract concepts between creators and audiences. Holographic entertainment becomes so sophisticated that participants can experience stories from multiple perspectives simultaneously, while retaining their own identity and judgment. Musical performances use force-directed sound manipulation to create acoustic environments that promote specific emotional and psychological states. Healing concerts help trauma victims recover from psychological wounds, while inspiration concerts enhance creativity and problem-solving abilities in listeners. Visual arts incorporate force-sensitive materials that respond to observers' emotional states, creating paintings and sculptures that transform based on who views them and their psychological needs at the moment. Museums become interactive experiences where historical events can be experienced from multiple perspectives while maintaining scholarly accuracy. Literature evolves to include stories that adapt their narratives based on readers' interests and emotional responses, creating personalized experiences that maintain artistic integrity while maximizing individual relevance. Educational materials use similar techniques to optimize learning efficiency while preserving the joy of discovery. The transformation of transportation systems revolutionizes how beings experience travel and distance. Hyperspace navigation becomes so precise and efficient that journeys that once took weeks can be completed in hours. More importantly, the psychological barriers that distance had created between different worlds and cultures begin to disappear. Trade relationships evolve beyond simple resource exchange to include cultural and intellectual commerce. Artists and scholars regularly travel between worlds to share techniques and perspectives. Scientists collaborate on projects that span multiple star systems, with research teams that include beings from dozens of different species and backgrounds. The development of force-enhanced communication networks enables real-time collaboration across galactic distances. A medical team on Coruscant can provide surgical guidance to physicians on Ryloth, while archaeologists on Yavin share discoveries instantly with colleagues throughout the galaxy. These communication capabilities also transform governance and administration. The bureaucratic delays and communication gaps that had plagued both Imperial and Rebel organizations become obsolete as decision-makers can access complete information and coordinate responses in real time. Regional administrators no longer operate in isolation, but as part of integrated networks that can respond to local needs while maintaining galactic coordination. Natural disasters, economic disruptions, and social conflicts can be addressed through coordinated responses that draw on resources and expertise from across the galaxy. The legal system evolves to incorporate force-enhanced investigation and arbitration techniques that can determine truth with unprecedented accuracy while respecting individual privacy and rights. Trials become collaborative efforts to understand causes and develop solutions rather than adversarial competitions to assign blame and punishment. Rehabilitation rather than punishment becomes the focus of criminal justice, with techniques that can address the root psychological and social causes of antisocial behavior. Recidivism rates drop dramatically as former criminals receive treatment that heals the underlying trauma and dysfunction that had led to their destructive choices. The military transformation reflects the broader philosophical changes throughout society. The massive fleets and armies that had characterized the Imperial and Rebel forces evolve into smaller, more specialized units focused on exploration, disaster relief, and conflict prevention rather than large-scale warfare. Elite units develop capabilities that combine advanced technology with force enhancement to handle situations that require precision and restraint rather than overwhelming force. Hostage rescues, terrorist incidents, and humanitarian crises are resolved with minimal casualties and maximum protection for innocent civilians. Peacekeeping forces use force-enhanced empathy and communication skills to mediate conflicts before they escalate to violence. Many disputes that would once have required military intervention are resolved through enhanced diplomatic techniques that address underlying causes rather than just immediate symptoms. The Space Navy evolves into an exploration and research service that maintains defensive capabilities while focusing primarily on expanding knowledge and establishing peaceful contact with new civilizations. First contact protocols developed through collaboration between former Imperial and Rebel specialists ensure that new relationships begin with mutual respect and understanding. Military academies become institutions that train leaders in crisis management, diplomatic mediation, and collaborative problem-solving rather than tactical dominance and strategic warfare. Graduates serve as administrators, explorers, and peacekeepers rather than conquerors and enforcers. The economic transformation enables unprecedented prosperity throughout the galaxy. The resources that had been consumed by constant warfare are redirected toward infrastructure development, education, and research. Standard of living improvements occur so rapidly that poverty becomes a historical curiosity rather than a current reality. Advanced automation handles routine production and maintenance tasks, while enhanced beings focus on creative, analytical, and interpersonal work that requires judgment, intuition, and emotional intelligence. Unemployment becomes obsolete, not because there's no work to be done, but because the work that needs doing requires human capabilities that cannot be replicated by purely artificial systems. The monetary system evolves to incorporate resource abundance and automated production, with economic value increasingly based on creativity, innovation, and service rather than control of scarce materials. Artists, teachers, healers, and researchers become the most valued members of society, as their contributions cannot be automated or mass-produced. Trade between worlds focuses on sharing unique cultural products, specialized knowledge, and artistic innovations rather than competing for basic resources. Each world develops its own distinctive contributions to galactic civilization, while having access to the best products and ideas from throughout the galaxy. The scientific revolution enabled by force-enhanced research capabilities leads to discoveries that fundamentally change understanding of physics, biology, and consciousness. The relationship between mind and matter proves more intimate than traditional science had suspected, with consciousness itself revealed as a fundamental force that shapes reality at quantum levels. These insights enable new technologies that seem almost magical to observers familiar with conventional science. Matter can be manipulated directly through focused consciousness. Energy can be converted between forms through mental direction, and information can be transmitted instantaneously across any distance through force-enhanced quantum entanglement. The practical applications transform every aspect of daily life. Manufacturing becomes as simple as mentally directing raw materials to assume desired forms. Transportation evolves beyond mechanical propulsion to include consciousness-directed movement through space. Communication transcends physical limitations as beings learn to share thoughts and experiences directly. Most importantly, the philosophical framework that emerged from the successful integration of seemingly contradictory elements provides a model for addressing other apparent impossibilities. If the limitation imposed by damaged biology could be overcome through technology, if the conflict between empire and rebellion could be resolved through synthesis, if the opposition between light and dark sides of the Force could be transcended through balance, then perhaps any limitation or conflict could be addressed through sufficient creativity and determination. The galaxy that emerges from these transformations represents something unprecedented in galactic history. A civilization that has successfully transcended the traditional limitations of organic life without losing its essential humanity, that has achieved unprecedented technological capability while maintaining wisdom and compassion, and that has resolved fundamental conflicts through integration rather than dominance. Future historians will mark the moment of Vader's decision to upgrade his suit as the beginning of a new era in galactic evolution. What began as a personal quest to overcome physical limitations became the foundation for a complete transformation of civilization itself. The legacy extends beyond the immediate galaxy to influence how other civilizations throughout the universe approach their own development. The model of enhancement through integration rather than replacement, of conflict resolution through synthesis rather than victory, and of growth through cooperation rather than competition, becomes a template that other worlds and species adapt to their own circumstances. The suit that had been designed as a prison became the key to liberation not just for one individual, but for an entire galaxy. The technological innovations that enabled Vader's transformation became the foundation for advances that benefited countless billions of beings. The personal journey from limitation to freedom became a galactic journey from conflict to cooperation. As the transformed galaxy continues to evolve and grow, the principles established through Vader's enhancement process continue to guide development toward ever greater possibilities. Each new generation builds upon the insights gained from successful integration of organic and artificial capabilities, pushing the boundaries of what sapient beings can achieve while maintaining the essential qualities that make life meaningful. The story of Vader's upgraded suit becomes more than just an alternate history. It becomes a demonstration that any limitation can be overcome, any conflict can be resolved, and any individual can transcend their circumstances to achieve their full potential. The only requirements are sufficient creativity, determination, and willingness to challenge conventional assumptions about what's possible. With the Emperor's death, Vader faces choices that his previous form could never have contemplated. The galaxy is in chaos, with Imperial forces uncertain about their loyalties and rebel forces preparing to capitalize on the power vacuum. His enhanced capabilities make him uniquely positioned to either restore order or allow chaos to reign. But Vader's transformation has been about more than just technological enhancement. The process of overcoming his limitations has also restored aspects of his personality that had been suppressed by decades of pain and dependence. For the first time since Mustafar, he has the freedom to choose his path, rather than simply reacting to circumstances imposed by others. The decision he makes will reshape the galaxy. Rather than simply claiming the Emperor's throne and continuing the existing system, Vader chooses to implement the reforms that his enhanced perspective has shown him are necessary. The Empire's oppressive policies, designed to maintain control through fear and suffering, are replaced with a more pragmatic approach that addresses the legitimate grievances that fuel rebellion. His enhanced capabilities allow him to enforce these changes effectively, demonstrating that strength can be used to protect rather than oppress. The Rebel Alliance, faced with an empire that no longer represents an existential threat to freedom and justice, gradually transforms from a military resistance into a political opposition. Luke Skywalker, when he finally emerges as a Force-sensitive individual, encounters a father who is no longer defined by pain and limitation. Their relationship develops not through conflict and redemption, but through mentorship and shared purpose. Vader's enhancements have given him the freedom to be the father that Anakin Skywalker might have been. The legacy of Vader's upgrades extends far beyond his personal transformation. The technologies and techniques developed during his enhancement process influence cybernetic medicine throughout the galaxy, helping countless beings overcome disabilities and limitations. The integration of Force-sensitive materials with technology opens new possibilities for exploration and development. Most importantly, the philosophical implications of his transformation influence how future generations understand the relationship between technology and organic life. Rather than seeing cybernetic enhancement as a loss of humanity, Vader's example demonstrates that technology can be used to transcend limitations while preserving the essential aspects of identity and purpose. The suit that began as a prison becomes the foundation for liberation. The limitations imposed by a controlling master are overcome through innovation and determination. The pain that defined decades of existence is replaced by the freedom to choose one's destiny. In the end, Vader's enhanced suit represents more than just technological advancement. It symbolizes the possibility that any limitation can be overcome, any chain can be broken, and any individual can transcend their circumstances to achieve their full potential. The man who was more machine than man becomes proof that the boundary between organic and artificial is less important than the will to grow beyond imposed restrictions. The galaxy that emerges from this transformation is more just, more peaceful, and more prosperous than it might have been under continued imperial oppression or chaotic rebellion. Vader's enhancements, motivated by personal ambition, ultimately serve the greater good by creating possibilities that neither light nor dark side philosophy alone could have achieved. That's our theory. The Star Wars universe is a galaxy filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey to a galaxy far, far away, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.